do a quick overview of Buffalo Springs, where you lead the charge there. You're the manager there, correct?
Correct. Yep. All we do is all rainbow trout, and it's about somewhere 350,000 fish a year, and it's about 80 to 90,000 pounds.
Wow.
And those are, like I said, those are reared from an egg to an adult. The production building, which is where we hatch everything we raise at Buffalo, we hatch from an egg up. So we hatch them, and then we have indoor troughs where we'll raise them out to fingerlings, like say 4 or 5 inch fish. And then from there, we'll move them outside. We have 24 raceways. They're 2 wide, so like 12 and 12, 8 foot by 100 foot long each. It's all flow through. Our water source is spring water. It's a constant 58 degrees year round. It takes, a lot of times it's a year and a half to 2 years even sometimes, some of the fish we stock, but usually somewhere between a year and 2-year-old fish is what we're stocking for the most part.
That was going to be my next question, was how long do you hold those fish? How long does that process take? But this is year-round.
It's 7 days a week operation, but those tanks inside have to be cleaned every day. Those fish need to be fed every day.
Christmas Day, Thanksgiving,
New Year's, we
they got to eat.
Yep.
So hog jaw and black eyed peas on New Year's, right?
Won't you take me back to Tennessee? The award-winning Tennessee Wildcast is on the air with the latest info about hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. This year, we celebrate the men and women of the TWRA responsible for 75 years of wildlife conservation. Now make welcome your host, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Wildcast. We're glad you're tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We got a fun show lined up today. We are in Morristown, Tennessee, with Mr. Matt Cameron helping co-host. Thanks for having us here, Matt.
Hey, welcome back.
We are in front of the Trapper's Cabin here in his conference room or auditorium here, so it's always fun to be back in Morristown.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to having y'all for a while now and got some great guests lined up while you're in town.
We're going to be in town for a few days and shoot a few shows, but it's going to be good. Just wanted to first highlight one of our radio stations in the area, Morristown, WJDT, just right up the road, right, Matt?
Yeah, just over the bridge there, just in Granger County.
Yeah, so they run the show 5:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, so we appreciate our radio partners. Couldn't do it without them. We got 30 plus stations across the state who run the show and make us just get the word out, but help us get the word out, so we appreciate them. Appreciate you guys watching and listening out there on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those channels out there, and also thanks for listening on the podcast, so appreciate that. Today we're going to be with Roger Bitz. Roger is no stranger to Wildcast, but it's been a while back. We were reflecting in episodes 61 and 67.
It's been a while.
Back when Doug was helping lead the charge here on Wildcast, but anyway, Doug Markham helped us get the show going back in the day, and we're still rolling with 400 plus episodes, so it's really cool. And looking back, it's fun to watch some of those older shows and see how we did it. It's changed quite a bit, but
a few less gray hairs back then.
Yeah, exactly, in the beard and in the hair. I'm not losing hair now, but anyway, thanks for being here, Roger. Thanks for taking time out of your day to do this, and it's good to have you back. So let's dive in. It's all about Buffalo Springs today. Matt reached out to these guys and said, let's do a show on some hatcheries. So we got Buffalo Springs today, and that's where you lead the charge there. You're the manager there, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And how many hatcheries do we have here Region 4?
We've got Buffaloes, which we're cold water, Irwin hatcheries, another cold water trout hatchery. Then we've got the warm water hatcheries, which will be Morristown and Eagle Bend. And I believe that's it in Region 4.
I think so.
Yeah, so we got 4. Two cold water and 2 warm water hatcheries.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
Okay, cool. Well, let's dive in today on Buffalo Springs. But let's back up. Just do a background. I'd love to hear more about you and kind of your path to where you are today. I'm sure we covered that on those earlier episodes, but let's recap that again.
Sure. Yeah.
And get to know you a little bit.
So, yeah, I graduated Tennessee Tech in 2007, got my degree in wildlife fisheries with a concentration in fisheries. From there, I was kind of just put my resume out everywhere, that during that time, we were in that recession time and a lot of people weren't hiring. So Florida was the first place that called, and I packed my stuff and went down there. Got hired on as an entry-level biologist with Florida in their research division. Mm-hmm. And that was a great, right out of the gun, a great way for me to get some experience quick, because it was we got hired on for it was part of a long-term monitoring data collection program that we got sent all over the state of Florida.
Hands-on.
Everywhere, yeah, from the Everglades to the Panhandle, and it was every kind of fisheries sampling you could think of. And it was just part of implementing a new standardized data collection program. So that really got me exposed to a lot of facets of fisheries. And when I got into it, my dream job was always to be a biologist, reservoir biologist. So that was really good. Got promoted a couple years after that. Worked almost exclusively in the Panhandle of Florida after that. Got to work on some different projects there. And like most East Tennessee boys, got homesick. So that was 2012. I was able to get hired on up here as a technician in the reservoir crew. Matter of fact, just right next door to the hatchery.
Okay.
Region 4 reservoir crew. And worked there for about a year. And then the position in Springfield Hatchery opened up. David Roddy, who's our hatchery coordinator, he was the previous manager, moved up to hatchery coordinator, and his position opened up. And hatcheries was never anything that I'd really honestly pursued. I mean, if you'd asked me in college, you think you'll ever work at a fish hatchery, I'd be like, no, I'm not interested in that, But I thought, it's one, it was a promotion, but two, I thought, well, here's one facet of fisheries that I hadn't had experience in. I thought, well, I think I owe it to myself to at least dive into that a little bit and try it and see if, and within a couple months of getting in that position as a hatchery manager at Springfield, I realized, I was like, man, this is rewarding. There's something about it that it just clicked with me personally to, okay, here I make an adjustment and I see a change.
Yeah, definitely.
And something about growing fish, it's just, I guess it's kind of like maybe what farmers, the satisfaction that farmers get, because that's what it is.
Crop or whatever.
It's fish farming with a scientific twist is how I describe it. But so yeah, Springfield was a warm water hatchery.
That's where we first met.
Yes.
Yeah, did a show
That's
there.
Right. Yep.
In front of one of the big ponds.
Right. So, there, like most of our warm water hatcheries, we raise walleye, sauger, crappie, Florida strain largemouth, striped bass, hybrids, a couple other different species. So I got some experience raising fish there for 7 years. Then again, kind of got a little homesick for East Tennessee. And when Buffalo opened up, I thought, there again, I was in hatcheries and I enjoyed hatcheries, but so when Buffalo opened up, it was a cold water hatchery. And there again, I was like, I've never saw myself being a cold water hatchery guy. But just like before, I thought, well, here's an opportunity to get back to East Tennessee and something new there. I felt like I owed it to myself to at least try that. So I was fortunate enough to get the position that I'm in now. And just like before, it just kind of clicked. So that's where we're at. I've been in Buffalo since 2019, so 5 years, a little over five years now. So
That's cool. Well, I want to jump back just a hair. You mentioned just about everything. You handled just about everything in Florida. Did you ever get into gators?
Oh yeah,
Things like that.
yes, yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
different world down there.
It is. So that was actually it was kind of one of my hobbies down there. One of my passions. I love to hunt and fish. I got into alligator hunting my first year down there, and it was an experience. And alligator's delicious if you've ever eaten alligator tail.
Definitely.
But, got into that and got to do some with the agency some different programs where we actually got to go out and trap some alligators. And there was one particular project. It was a buddy of mine. He's an alligator biologist down there, and at that time, this lake in Central Florida is Lake Apopka. It's on the Harris Channel Lakes. It was had been closed to alligator hunting for years and years because it was surrounded by muck farms and the contaminants and stuff. So they wouldn't allow hunting there because of the potential contaminants, mercury and whatnot, PCBs in the alligator flesh. So we always talked about, because we were out there sampling. This place had giant alligators everywhere. It was like Jurassic Park.
Wow.
So we always joked about, man, if we could ever hunt this lake, it would just be epic. So he calls me up a couple years later and he said, man, our dream's coming true. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, we're going to go catch alligators on Lake Apopka. He said, you want in? I said, absolutely. So I drove 4 hours from the Panhandle down and helped him with this project. And it was kind of a collaborative project between the FWCs, Florida Fish and Wildlife, some folks at NASA, and then the University of Florida folks. And the goal was to capture these alligators, but we had the trick was you had to catch them alive, and they had to pull blood on them, and collect all the data that they could, but you had to pull blood on them while they're alive and look at all these different things. And then of course they would euthanize the gator later to look at flesh samples, and they were looking at all these contaminants and stuff in there. So
wow.
They said the goal was go out. He said, we want the oldest, biggest males you can get. So we were ecstatic, and we got out. The first one we got he was 12 foot 1 inches, 495 pounds.
Full grown.
And
how old is a gator that big?
I'm not an alligator biologist, but I think it varies. But you're talking probably 50 years or older than 50 years.
Wow.
They say they can live to be 100, but again, I'm not an alligator biologist, but he's old. And then the other one we got was like a 12.3, and it was close to 700 pounds.
A beast.
Yeah.
They were getting everything because they were having to euthanize the gators. They were getting every piece of data they could, stomach contents and everything. But it was pretty interesting to see. I think one of them, had the typical stuff you'd expect an alligator to eat, birds, turtles, fish, and then the other one was just full of crayfish. It's like really something this big is just eating crayfish. So it was
easy meal.
It was fun.
Like a delicious meal.
Yeah.
I guess you don't just dive out of the boat on their backs and wrestle them to the ground like Steve Irwin, right?
Stuff you see on TV is,
How you catch them things?
So we would use these heavy duty rod and reels, like, something you'd use for a muskie or an offshore big heavy duty rod and reel, 100-pound braid and a snag hook. And you'd throw out, snag them, and usually you'd have to get 2 rods. One that big, you can't move them with something. But if you get 2 rods in them, then you can kind of manipulate them. And then when you get them up to the boat, you harpoon them, which that just kind of goes in under the skin, and it doesn't hurt the alligator. Goes in and turns out, and then you've got them on a hard line like a rope and steel wire. Wow. And at that point, you pull them up beside the boat. In this case, where they had to be alive, we had this piece of PVC pipe and these huge zip ties kind of manipulated to where slip it over the mouth, zip tie him up, And then, of course, his mouth's shut at that point. Then you grab his head, duct tape or electrical tape his mouth up.
Yeah.
And then the fun starts. You got to have about one that size. It took about 3 men to get him in the boat. But as soon as you get him in the boat, then you got to jump on him and turn their legs and their arms back like a chicken wing so they can't get leverage. Otherwise, they can roll or swing that tail. And I tell you, a 12-foot alligator tail, about that big around, and it will break your leg like that.
No doubt.
So,
wow.
But, yeah, that was when I was young.
Now you work with trout.
Now I work with trout. I'm going on to stay for things now.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that backstory. That's pretty cool adventures there. It's pretty cool to see and know where some of our guys and gals come from. So, not everybody starts in Tennessee and works through. They explore other opportunities and then work their way back a lot of times. But anyway, okay. Well, let's do a quick overview of Buffalo Springs and what all goes on there, and we'll dive into some more details. So, tell us a little bit about the fish production there. I know it's trout, but just kind of what your day-to-day looks like there and what y'all do.
So Buffalo, I'll back up a little bit and give you a little bit of history that I know. It was around 1970 was when somewhere around that time, they had finished what we have now as the production building, which is where we hatch everything we raise at Buffalo, we hatch from an egg up. Mm-hmm. So it was where we hatch them, and then we have indoor troughs where we'll raise them out to fingerlings, like say 4 or 5 inch fish, and then from there we'll move them outside. So around 1970s when they'd finished the building portion of it, and they actually stocked fish in Tennessee the first few years just with fish out of that building. And Rick Bean, one of the technicians, he's actually still part-time with us, he had worked down there since the hatchery essentially had opened.
Wow, that's good history, background knowledge right there.
And I call him all the time for historical stuff. Hey, where's this pipe at? Oh, it's over here, and it's just stuff like that. They never written that stuff down years ago.
Right. Yeah.
But he said that they actually they stocked fish out of that building in the Little Tennessee before Tellico Lake was even a lake. And he was telling me, up there below Chilhowie Lake, he said, yeah, we stocked fish up there, and it was all standing timber and running water, and it was just kind of neat to hear the history of that.
Sure.
But,
yeah, definitely.
But around 1975, they finished the outdoor portion of the hatchery, which is where those fingerlings go and are reared out to adult size. So
are those raceways or ponds?
They're raceways. So everything,
I guess with cold water, it needs to be flowing.
Yes, it's flow through. We have 24 raceways. They're 2 wide, so like 12 and 12. They're 8 foot by 100 foot long each. So it's all flow through. Our water source is spring water. It's a constant 58 degrees year round. So that's the good part.
Yeah.
We're responsible for, it's about 30 different locations that we stock, and mostly in Region 4, some places in Region 3, but it ranges from small streams, creeks, to rivers like Little River, Middle Prong, West Prong, Pigeon River, to tailwaters. You got the Clinch River, Norris Tailwater, Cherokee Tailwater, Holston River, and then we do some small lakes. We do some winter programs, urban fishing, like Fountain City Lake. Yeah. We've done a lot of work there.
That's been hugely popular down there.
Yeah,
by the way.
Yeah, that's been a really good bang for a buck for what we do there, and then some reservoirs, Upper East Tennessee, like South Holston, Watauga Reservoir. In the wintertime, we'll stock some adult fish up there. Okay. So it's kind of an array of water bodies, but all we do is all rainbow trout. And it's about somewhere 350,000 fish a year, and it's about 80 to 90,000 pounds.
Wow.
And those are, like I said, those are reared from an egg to an adult. And it takes, a lot of times it's a year and a half to 2 years even, sometimes some of the fish we stock, but usually somewhere between a year and 2 year old fish is what we're stocking for the most part.
That was going to be my next question was, how long do you hold those fish? How long does that process take? But this is year-round.
Year-round.
And production is year-round, too. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. That water temperature is the same. And,
yeah, pretty much. It fluctuates, when our source drops, and this time of year when it's really hot, it might fluctuate 2 degrees, but it's not bad. We do a little bit of everything there, but it's 7 days a week operation. I mean, it's
like a farmer, like you said earlier.
It's 7 days a week. Somebody at our facility, particularly if we've got indoor fish, that those tanks inside have to be cleaned every day. Those fish need to be fed every day.
Christmas Day, Thanksgiving,
New
Easter.
Year's. We
they gotta eat.
Yep.
So hog jaw and black eyed peas on New Year's, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Before we get into challenges, which is something I want to spend some time on, where do the eggs come from?
So 2/3 of at our facility, on average, we get about 3 batches of eggs per year. We'll get a batch in September, we'll get a batch in December, and then we'll get a batch in March, April time period. And that's strategic for based on the timing of those individual batches, what their needs are. So like we said, it's sometimes we're stocking 2-year-old fish, sometimes it's 1-year-old fish. So you've got to strategically set up your rotation in order to do that. As fish are going out, you're replacing them in these places. Mm-hmm. So those batches are strategic in that. The September and December batch, those come from Irwin Federal Hatchery that we've got up in Irwin, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Not to be confused with Irwin State Hatchery.
Corey Jones.
Corey Jones.
Okay.
This would be Irwin Federal Hatchery.
Okay. And then another batch comes from?
In recent years, we've been getting a batch from the state of Utah, actually, and they'll fly those into us, FedEx and
FedEx fish eggs. Who'd have thunk it?
And that's even though all we do is rainbow trout, they're different strains of rainbow trout. So the one particular strain that we're getting from Utah is called the West Virginia strain. It's kind of funny. We joke like we're getting West Virginia strain fish from Utah, but it's a really hardy trout. They're disease resistant and they grow really, really well. So we've been fortunate enough to be able to obtain those from there, and I actually took and grew some of those fish out to adults, and we actually spawned those at Buffalo a couple years ago, and were successful. But it was pretty interesting because the water temperature differences between us and Utah is about 10 degrees. So that same strain that they were spawning in March, April, we were actually able to spawn in like December, January, because of our water temps. So it's pretty interesting. But and we're actually going to try to spawn those fish that we made 2 years ago this year.
Do you keep the brooders there on site?
Mm-hmm.
And do milk them and all that?
Yep.
Is that a challenge?
It can be, but honestly, trout is, in my opinion, is easier to spawn than like walleye and sauger.
Okay.
Sauger, when I was at Springfield, sauger is one of the hardest fish that we make in our hatchery system. So I think it was a lot harder for those type of fish. But, that's not something that we do on a regular basis, but it was something that we wanted to try and kind of experiment with, especially with that particular strain, to see if we could, the timing in which we could spawn it in Tennessee and, maybe make a few extra eggs for a buffer for ourselves.
Just let everybody know there's 3 key things: water, space, and food is what makes a good quality hatchery and be able to produce good quality fish, right?
Right. And I think that same principle applies to even, lakes and reservoirs or rivers. I think you got if you got space, you got good water quality, and you got good food. Genetics helps.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those components is what makes a fishery. Now, whether that's a hatchery or a reservoir or lake, it's that simple. So,
cool.
Food, we're able to get probably the best food that we can feed fish in our hatchery system, and we've been very fortunate to keep that. Space, we've got good space. Our limiting factors is our water quality and quantity. And like I said before, our source is spring water. We're blessed with temperature, constant temperature, but unfortunately that water has got high nitrogen gas in it. And when you have that's essentially like the bends. Divers get the bends, you get bubbles, embolisms in the blood. Mm-hmm. So the only way to combat that is you got to increase your oxygen. Mm. And we were fortunate about 3 years ago to get this. There was some new technology out there that had been developed in Canada, and it's pretty revolutionary in the amount of oxygen that it infuses into the water. It essentially doubled our oxygen.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that enabled us to combat the nitrogen, and that brought on all, when fish get stressed, they get secondary diseases. Mm-hmm. Just like us, if we get our immune systems gets down mm-hmm. because of one thing, then we're going to catch 2 or 3 others. Yeah. Same thing with fish. So
that's one of your bigger challenges.
It is. Our spring water, the volume is not putting out what it historically used to. I mean, groundwater always fluctuates up, down, up, down. That's how aquifers naturally fluctuate. But what we're seeing now is these long-term trends of where the groundwater is staying lower for longer. Last year, we went 8 out of 9 months with less than 50% water capacity. Mm. And when we reach, at our facility, when we reach 50% water capacity, everything's exponential. It's your flow rates, since we're flow through, you've got to have that flow to get the stagnant water out. Mm-hmm. So this year, to combat that, we've just installed a recirculation system. So now we're recirculating about 20% of that water when we hit that level, which is pretty good. We've also recently discovered carbon dioxide in our water. So there's another component that we're faced with. And for 2 years, we've been plagued with bird predation.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the big ones I want to make sure we hit. So predators and birds is a big one.
Huge. Unbelievable, the fish that they've eaten. And I would have never believed it, but we've got the data to show it. And, we're talking 50, 60, 100 birds at a time. So to combat that, we have updated our coverings. We've gone, we used to have the net style coverings, and birds, I've got videos, they'll walk out on that netting, push it down, find it. I mean, they'll
through the net.
They'll catch them through the net, any little crack. So we've updated that with some coated chicken wire, and then we're in the process of putting a hard cover on the upper section. So
wow.
Yeah.
So will that make feeding and catching them to stock more difficult? An extra step.
The upper third that we're completely covering, we're gonna be installing some doors, some sliding doors to access that. The lower section, essentially, it'll operate the same way. It's just a more robust covering. So.
Well, I'm glad we found a solution that'll help.
Yeah. And so far, we've already got the lower 2/3 done, and the birds actually, knock on wood, have left the last month. So first time in 2 years they've really left. So cut the food off, you stop giving them a free Golden Corral buffet, they're going to leave.
Yeah.
So.
Mostly herons.
Heron, we've got great blue herons, the egrets, and night herons. We're plagued with all 3. And then
they got a day shift and a night shift.
Minks and otters on top of that.
Lord, bro. Bringing their cronies.
A little trapping needs to go on. Well, hey, thank you for sharing all that. We need to get out there to the hatchery sometime and check it out, and maybe do a show from on location. It'd be kind of fun.
We're glad to have you.
Maybe take me fishing like you did Jason and Doug.
Yeah,
maybe I can catch something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fishing the raceway. I might have a chance then.
Don't leave me out. Call me. I want to go too.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun. Always good to get back to East Tennessee and chat with you guys. So this is Tennessee Wildcats. Keep coming back. Keep listening. Keep watching.
and we'll see you next time.
Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Join us as we celebrate 75 years of conservation in our great state. You can invest in Tennessee's wildlife future by purchasing a license at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. That's GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.